Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Meta Design. In this episode, we're going to learn how to do selections, right? There's a lot to do with selections. And in this video, we're actually going to learn the different ways to select things and how selections work with different objects. So let's get right to it. Okay, so I'm going to create a new document, right? It's just 1000 into 1000. Okay, we've got this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circle. Okay, it's going to be a dark blue circle. I'm going to hit the enter key. We have this. There's a little bit of stroke attached to it. That's fine. I'm just going to move it around, move it to the center. Awesome. So one quick tip in Photoshop is that if you press the view button, right, or the view, if you click on the view menu and click on new guide and you set in maybe 50%, you can just have a guide, right? This blue line doesn't really exist. You can hide it with the Control H buttons, right? You can hide all the guides, but I'm going to put it back because I want to just make sure that this is centered, right? So this is beautiful. I'm just going to go to view. I'm going to remove the guide. I'm just going to click on clear guides. So, we just have a good visual field. Now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to cut out this circle, right? I'm going to cut random stuff out of this circle. So I'm going to click on the selection tool. I'm going to select a part of the circle. I'm going to press the delete button. And as you can see, we get an error. It says, could not complete your request because the content of this layer is not directly editable. And the reason for that is because this layer is a smart object. And like I said, the pixels in the smart object can't be edited destructively. You can't paint on it, you can't delete it, you can't do much. You can only resize and turn it around and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this and click on rasterize layer, right? And now I'm going to deselect everything. That's Command plus D, right? And then I'm going to go back to the selection tool and I'm going to select a piece of this. And now I want to select another piece of this. Maybe I want to select the bottom left. To do that, I have to hold the shift key, right? Or I can click this here, which is add to selection. So I'm going to add this to selection, right? So now I have two pieces selected. Now maybe I want to, remove a little bit of selection. Maybe I've over selected. And the way to do that is to click on this, which is subtract from selection. So I'm going to remove maybe this piece. And as you can see, this is simple maths, right? It's like you've studied set theory in school. It's very simple. You have something, you can either add to it or you can remove from it. Right? But this marker, these dotted markers actually tell you how much is being selected, what's being selected. And now I'm going to hit the delete key. With this layer selected, I'm going to hit the delete key. And as you can see, I have cleared some bits of the selection. I'm going to press Command D. And as you can see, we have a half-eaten ellipse. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that you can select inverse, right? You can do some little more complex math with this. So I'm going to click on the selection tool again. Instead of this selection tool, let's use the lasso selection tool. And if you right click the lasso selection tool, you get, a bunch of other selection tools, but let's stay on the lasso. And I'm going to draw maybe, an hourglass figure. This is the worst hourglass figure, but you guys get the point. Now, what I want to do is I want to keep this and I want to select, or I want to delete everything else. I want to keep just the bit that I selected. Now, if I press the delete key, you will see that this part gets cut out, but I want to cut everything apart from this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo. That's Control plus Z. I'm going to undo. I know this part is selected. Now what I do is I right click and I click on select inverse, right? So now I've selected everything except the part that I had selected. So now I think you probably get the hang of this, right? With selections, it's all about what you have versus what you don't have. And now if I hit the delete key, we have just the bit that I selected, right? So select in inverse allows you to select everything but what you have selected. So every other part of the layer except what you have selected, but it only works in the particular layer. It will not select anything in any other layer. So if you had other stuff in other layers, this wouldn't affect it at all. Let me show you an example. So I'm going to go to new layer. Okay. And I'm going to create a rectangle. Let me change the color. Okay. Awesome. Now I'm going to rasterize this. Otherwise it's going to give us issues when we do some selections. I'm going to, just select, use the circular marquee tool. I'm going to select All right, I'm going to move the selection a little bit. And now I'm going to right click, select inverse. And you can only select inverse when you have one of the selection tools clicked on. So either you need to be on the selection tool, the marquee tool, or the lasso tool, or the quick wand, one of the selection tools, right? And I'm going to select inverse. And you can see that it's selected inverse because you can see some dots, all across the entire layer. I'm going to press delete. And I'm going to press Command D to deselect, right? Now, as you can see, none of this has affected the layers below, because if I move this, you'll see that the layer below is completely intact. So that's the cool thing about selections. Learn how to select, learn how to do additive select, learn how to delete, learn how to select inverse. And one last selection technique. If you want to select all the contents of a particular layer, what you should do is, you can see these thumbnails, right? You can see them, right? Hold the control key and click on the thumbnail to select everything in a particular layer. I like to call this the mini click. So hold the command key and click on this thumbnail and you'll select everything in the layer. I'm going to deselect for now. Hold the command key and click on the thumbnail of any layer and you'll be able to select everything in the layer. That's a cool thing, right? Then I'm going to select one of the selection tools, right? Right click and click on feather. Right, I'm going to click on feather, and feather, maybe let's do 10 pixels. Okay. Now something's happened. We can't see it, but we know that a little bit of the selection has been left out, right? We don't know why this has happened yet, but let's do this. Let's right click. So we've selected inverse. Let's select this layer, the ellipse layer, and let's hit the delete key. And as you can see, you have this nice little feathered effect, right? This is called the feather effect. What we've essentially done is we've asked Photoshop to, cut some of the pixels away, but leave some of the opacity in. And when we select inverse and delete, we're leaving some pixels which are still visible. So that's the beautiful part about feather. It gives a nice, soft, glowy effect. It's nice when you want to, have a nice gradual separation between something and its background. All right, so let's do one last type of selection. Let me just delete both these layers. Let me open our man. All right, let's show you how to cut this man out of his background. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the layer, right? This is already a rasterized layer. We don't see that small symbol here. And I'm going to show you another tool called instead of the magic wand tool, which you already know, I'm going to show you the quick selection tool. The quick selection tool allows you, it's like a magic wand, but a more localized magic wand. So I'm going to choose a size of 30 and holding down the shift key, I'm going to start selecting, pixels. And this, it's again color matching. It tries to find its nearest color. If something looks like it's away from its background, Photoshop is smart enough to be able to, leave that out. We've selected everything. You right click, select inverse and delete, right? And you cut the man out of his background. Now, what happens if you don't select inverse? What happens if, you just selected this and you just hit delete? This is what would happen. You would actually cut the man out. And obviously, as you can see, we've not made a perfect selection, but I'm pressing Command Z, getting you back here. We're going to select this too, right? And we're going to right click, select inverse and delete everything so that you have the man cut out from his background. Now, if I created a new layer, I'm just going to create a new layer. Okay, I'm going to fill this layer with maybe, red. Okay, obviously this layer is on top, so you can't see the man. I'm just going to drag this layer below. And as you can see, this man is here away from his background. Now, as you can see, this is not a perfect selection. If I zoom in, right, you can still see some jagged edges. You can still see that this isn't a perfect selection. And we're going to learn how to make pixel perfect selections later. We're going to learn how to be accurate with the tools we use, which is why I don't really recommend you use things like the magic wand or the quick selection. There are ways to define the edge, but I'm not a big fan of this. I prefer to do it cleanly and perfectly, and we will learn that in one of the coming episodes. So that's it for this episode. Hope you learned a little bit about selections, cuttings, and cutting, and how to mini click the layers. In the next episode, let's learn some more cool stuff. Calling it a day. Bye bye.